Welcome back, truth seekers. Before we dive in, here's a thought to set the tone. Injustice never stands alone. It always calls for action. Today, we're talking about something that has stirred up intense emotions, and rightfully so. What happened to one of the chosen ones is absolutely revolting, and the world is reacting with anger, frustration, and disbelief. But what exactly transpired? Why are people so upset? And what does this incident say about the way we treat those we deem special or deserving of respect? This is a story of betrayal, misunderstanding, and attack against someone who was simply minding their own business, only to be dragged into the storm of intolerance. If you're ready to hear about what's really happening and why it's so outrageous, stick with us. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Imagine living a peaceful life, minding your own business, only to have everything you know turned upside down. This was the reality for the innocent person at the center of this chaos. People had no reason to attack them, but attack they did. It started like any other day, but soon everything changed. At first, there was no warning, no sign that things were about to escalate. The individual was simply living life, not harming anyone, just like any of us. But sometimes, that's all it takes for someone to become the target of unjustifiable hate. What followed was a whirlwind of confusion and hurt. The actions taken against this individual were not just unprovoked, they were completely unwarranted. Those who carried out this attack did so with no real understanding, no empathy, and no consideration for the impact they would have. In the blink of an eye, a peaceful existence was shattered. The ripple effect of this injustice reached far beyond the person directly involved. It touched everyone who witnessed it, everyone who heard about it, and everyone who could relate to the sense of vulnerability it created. Now, we're left with the aftermath. A world filled with questions, accusations, and the broken pieces of a life that didn't deserve to be upended. The attack wasn't just physical. It was emotional, psychological, and spiritual. When someone is attacked without cause, it raises a deeper issue. It forces us to confront the ugly truth that sometimes, even the most innocent among us, are not safe. Being labeled as chosen is supposed to be a mark of respect and reverence, not a bullseye. But what happens when that label becomes a weapon in the hands of those with malicious intent? The betrayal runs deep when those who are meant to protect and uplift instead seek to harm. The concept of being chosen carries with it a sense of purpose, responsibility, and often admiration. People view you differently. They treat you differently, often with more respect, but sometimes with envy or even resentment. It's almost as if the chosen ones carry a target on their backs, a label that both elevates and isolates them. Instead of finding comfort in their elevated status, they find themselves surrounded by a cloud of judgment. Expectations mount, and when people don't meet those expectations, whether in real or perceived ways, they become the target of attacks. In this case, the label of chosen didn't protect the individual from those who sought to tear them down. Instead, it made them more of a target. This scenario is a harsh reminder that sometimes the very people you trust, the ones you expect to protect you, are the ones who will hurt you the most. Whether intentional or not, this betrayal leaves deep scars. For the individual at the center of this, it must have felt like a double betrayal. First from those who attacked, and second from those who stood by and did nothing. Being chosen isn't a safeguard, Instead, it can be a weapon used against you. Social media, news outlets, and everyday citizens are all in an uproar. They are furious, and it's easy to see why. The injustice is so blatant, and the response has been a tidal wave of rage. This attack didn't just harm the individual, it tore at the very fabric of what we value as a society. People are understandably upset because the injustice is so raw, so evident, and so impossible to ignore. What started as a single attack has now sparked a movement of outrage. Everyone seems to have an opinion, and in a world where we often feel powerless, this shared outrage is a call to action. But let's be clear, the anger is justified. It isn't just about the harm done to one person. It's about the systemic issues that allowed such an attack to happen in the first place. The moment this attack occurred, it became a symbol of the larger issues at play. It's a reminder of how easy it is for an individual to be crushed by the weight of society's judgment, by the cruelty of a few, or even by the apathy of the masses. The emotional outpouring isn't just about the victim, it's about all of us. We've all felt that helplessness, that frustration, when we see something wrong, but can't seem to change it. But sometimes, in the face of injustice, the collective voice is the most powerful tool we have. We see this in the waves of people speaking up, sharing their thoughts, their anger, and their support for the victim. This fury, while a natural response, is also a form of solidarity. It's a recognition that an attack on one is an attack on many. And as the cries for justice grow louder, the hope is that they will be heard, that they will push for real change. If we allow such acts of violence and hatred to go unchecked, we risk losing the very values that hold us together as a society. There's a misconception that those who are chosen have it all. But what's often unseen is the burden they carry, the expectations placed upon them, and the weight of judgment. This isn't a life of privilege. It's a life where every move is scrutinized and every word twisted. It's a lonely path to walk. People often assume that being chosen means having all the benefits, fame, power, influence. But what they don't see is the pressure that comes with it. The truth is, being chosen doesn't shield someone from the harsh realities of life. In many ways, it magnifies them. The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. What people don't realize is that those who are chosen often walk a tightrope. One misstep, one wrong word, and the very people who once praised them can turn their backs in an instant. This is the delicate nature of living under scrutiny, and it's a burden that few truly understand. The expectations placed on the chosen ones are immense. They are expected to be perfect, flawless even, which is simply impossible. When they falter, when they fall short of these unrealistic standards, they face the wrath of a world that is quick to judge, quick to condemn, and often slow to forgive. It's a kind of isolation that most can't comprehend. Being surrounded by people, but feeling utterly alone. The weight of judgment and expectation can be crushing. And then there's the other side of being chosen, the resentment it breeds. People who feel overlooked or left behind often direct their frustrations at those who are chosen. The more someone stands out, the more likely they are to become a target of envy and hate. What people forget is that the chosen are human too. They aren't invincible. They aren't immune to pain or harm. They just happen to be in the spotlight. And sometimes that spotlight burns. The narrative around this attack is what makes it even more disturbing. Instead of the focus being on the attackers, the victim has been painted as the villain. People have bought into a narrative that distorts the truth, making it seem as though the one who was attacked is the one at fault. This is a disturbing twist. When the victim becomes the villain, the true injustice is obscured. It's an age-old tactic used by those in power to deflect attention from their wrongdoings and shift blame onto the innocent. This reversal of roles is a powerful tool in the hands of those who seek to manipulate the narrative. By turning the victim into the aggressor, they make it easier to justify the attack. They distract from the real issues and create confusion. Suddenly, the focus shifts from the attacker's wrongdoing to the supposed faults of the one who was hurt. It's a psychological trick that keeps people from seeing the truth. The power of this distorted narrative is far-reaching. It can sway public opinion, tarnish reputations, and even ruin lives. It's an insidious form of control, making the victim appear guilty in the eyes of the public, making their suffering seem deserved. This tactic isn't new. It's been used for centuries to silence those who speak out or those who challenge the status quo. The real danger here is not just in the attack, but in the ability to manipulate how people perceive the attack. In this case, we see how easily the truth can be twisted and how dangerous that distortion can be. Instead of rallying around the victim, the public is divided. Some believe the twisted narrative, while others stand by the truth. This division is exactly what those who carried out the attack wanted. It creates confusion, spreads doubt, and makes it easier for the real wrongdoers to escape accountability. Why do we trust certain narratives and reject others? It all boils down to perception. The media, society, and even our own biases shape how we see the world. This point is crucial in understanding how a twisted perception can lead to gross injustice. The narrative around this attack is only a symptom of a larger issue: how easily perception can be manipulated. In today's world, we rely on the media to provide us with information. But what happens when the media itself is biased or corrupted? What happens when the stories we hear are selectively told, with details twisted or omitted to shape public opinion? It's a powerful tool for control. We are constantly fed narratives, some true, others distorted, but we rarely take the time to question where those narratives come from or who stands to benefit from them. In this case, the distortion of facts and manipulation of public perception served the attacker's interests, while the true victim was left to suffer in silence. The problem with perception is that it isn't always based on facts. We tend to rely on what feels true or what we've been told repeatedly, rather than searching for the truth ourselves. This is where the danger lies. When we let ourselves be swayed by half-truths or manipulated narratives, we lose sight of what truly matters: justice, fairness, and the protection of the innocent. One key factor in this manipulation is our own biases. We are all prone to seeing things through a particular lens, influenced by our personal experiences, upbringing, and even societal norms. These biases can cloud our judgment and lead us to accept distorted versions of reality without question. It's a reminder that in the fight for truth, we must constantly check our own perceptions and be aware of how they may be influenced. As fury spreads across communities, the question arises: who will take a stand? When the chosen are attacked, who speaks for them? This isn't just about one individual. It's about the broader issue of justice, accountability, and making sure the innocent are not left to fend for themselves in a world that seems determined to tear them down. The anger that has erupted in response to this attack is powerful, but it must also be channeled into meaningful action. We can't just shout about injustice. We need to act on it. The true question is whether or not we will allow such an attack to go unnoticed, whether we will continue to let the innocent be trampled underfoot by those with power or influence. In times like these, it is the collective responsibility of society to stand up and defend those who are vulnerable. If we allow this to continue, if we let those who attack without reason get away with it, then we risk perpetuating a culture of fear, where anyone can be a target simply for being different or standing out. It is time for all of us to ask, how far are we willing to go to stand up for what is right? Will we be bystanders, or will we rise to defend those who are chosen? The fight for justice is not easy, but it's one that must be fought by every single one of us. Silence is complicity, and in the face of such blatant injustice, silence is no longer an option. This is a moment to recognize the power of solidarity. When people come together to fight for the truth, there is strength in numbers. The outrage we see today can be the spark that ignites real change, but only if we channel that energy into action. It is not enough to be angry. We must use that anger to demand accountability, to stand up for those who have been wronged, and to ensure that such attacks are never allowed to happen again. There's a dangerous side to idolizing the chosen. What starts as reverence can easily turn into a dangerous game of power dynamics. The closer someone gets to being revered, the more likely they are to face resentment and hatred. This can lead to toxic expectations and ultimately destructive consequences. When people elevate someone to a pedestal, they often forget that the individual is still human. The expectations placed on the chosen are unrealistic and at times even harmful. The further up the pedestal they are placed, the greater the pressure becomes. Every action is scrutinized, every word is weighed, and every mistake is magnified. This creates a toxic environment where the chosen feel constantly under siege. The people who revere them are quick to turn against them if they don't meet the impossible standards set for them. And when the chosen falter, they become targets for ridicule, scorn, and even violence. What's even more dangerous is how easily admiration can turn to resentment. The line between adoration and hatred is often thinner than we realize. Those who once saw the chosen as a source of inspiration may begin to resent them when their own lives fall short of the ideal. This creates a volatile dynamic, one that can easily lead to destructive consequences. The chosen are put in an impossible position where the very qualities that make them admirable can also make them vulnerable to attack. This cycle of idolization and resentment is a reminder of the danger of placing anyone on a pedestal. People are not meant to be worshipped, nor are they meant to be torn down when they inevitably make mistakes. This dynamic is toxic for everyone involved, and it ultimately undermines the very values that we hold dear. In a world where people are constantly pushed to the edge, we must ask ourselves, what is the cost of standing for what is right? What happens when we allow the innocent to be attacked and left defenseless? If we don't stand up, who will? As we close this chapter today, I want to leave you with this thought. Change doesn't come from shouting louder than the next person. It comes from standing firmly in what's right, even when the world seems to be against you. Thank you for tuning in, If this video resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to our channel, and let's keep this conversation going. The truth can't stay silent for long.